Welcome, Night Owls, to the Book Club After Dark podcast, an inviting moodlit podcast. I'm your host, Danny.
And I'm Michelle. We break down fantasy, romantasy, dark romance, and thriller novels.
Indeed, all things enchanting, intriguing, suspenseful, and maybe a little spicy.
Each episode features intimate discussions on captivating stories, character breakdowns, fan theories, and more. And this is your content warning. This podcast contains mature themes and discussions that may not be suitable for all audiences. Episodes include explicit language and descriptions of mature romance, as well as depictions of violence and other intense subject matter. This podcast is rated R for mature audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
And of course, going forward from here, there's going to be lots of spoilers for the Fae and Alchemy series, including Brimstone and Quicksilver. So if you haven't read those books, this is your turning back point because this is going to be full of spoilers. So consider this your spoiler warning. Again, just like the previous episode of Brimstone, note that this will contain spoilers for the entire book. So if you haven't read it in full, just because we're only covering a section of chapters this time does not mean that there will not be nods or conversation related to the book in its entirety. So again, if you haven't read the entire book of Brimstone and you haven't talked about the ending yet or read the ending yet, please make sure that you go do that before you continue listening. So consider this your spoiler warning.
Let's get cozy because the best stories are told after dark.
All right, Michelle, tonight's drink of the episode, we're about to go on a journey, a pretty fun journey. I'm calling this drink the Shrek and Donkey Show, also known as Journey Through Zilvaren, which is what I think it would be called if it was turned into a ride. But anyway, I digress. This drink tonight I wanted to figure out a way to have some sand incorporated. So on the side here, on the glass it's like a whiskey style glass. And then there's a rocks glass. And there's a line down the side of caramel, and then it's dipped in cinnamon sugar, and it gives it this texture kind of look for sand if you're seeing it on screen. Of course, I'm going to show you how to make it, but what it consists of, because we know in Zilvaren, they drink whiskey, if you can call it that. I used apple whiskey and apple cider, kind of 'tis the season, but also that's our two ingredients. So equal parts apple whiskey and equal parts apple cider to this.
Ooh.
And you do your caramel strip here for the sand look, and you have the Shrek and Donkey Show / Journey Through Zilvaren. So cheers. Here's our drink of the episode.
Cheers. I love that. I actually made a drink because I wanted to feel included and I was craving something really sweet. So I'm not going to be just drinking water I normally do. I actually have a dirty soda with me. So that's like a dirty Coke. So Coke and then creamer of choice. But I'm naming this one the Waters of Zilvaren because we know those look brown.
Dirty. I love that. That's a 2 for 1 this episode.
There we
Amazing.
go. So cheers. I have something besides water today.
There you go. Very nice. We got
Definitely
this whiskey.
have
We
a
both got a
sweet
bottle of
flavor.
this whiskey actually when we went to the Good Pour and did our event. So this was actually one of the whiskeys that we got there. So we'll have to talk about it more, but I'll show you guys how to make it. Yeah.
At some point.
Yeah, you're gonna have to show us how to do this dirty soda recipe too. So let's do it.
I mean, I can.
We get
absolutely.
2 drinks of the episode. The Waters of Zilvaren. We've got all kinds of things going on in Zilvaren this time. We didn't get a map, but you know what? We got 2 drinks. So how about that?
That's what matters.
That's what matters. Tonight we're diving into Yuvelia and Zilvaren as we explore chapters 10 through 18 of Brimstone by Callie Hart. So whether you're reading along with us or just here for the book talk, we are very glad that you're here.
All right, we're going to start with our chapter recaps, and we're going to start with chapter 10. And remember, these recaps are very high level, meaning we're not getting into the nitty gritty of the chapters. We're just going over the important things that you need to be looking out for as you're reading, or if you're doing a reread, or, analyzing the book. So in chapter 10, we have the whole gang here. Saris Fisher, Ishabal, Telena, and Carrion are in the library researching the rot and alchemists. And obviously there isn't shit to be found because Belican stripped all the libraries of alchemy, because if you control the information, you can control the people. So
interesting.
Right. And we understand some important parts of the witches. So we are introduced to Nevercross through Ishabal. And that is their political seat. I would assume that's their capital, essentially. That's where education happens. That's where they make their laws, that sort of thing. And we are also introduced to the catacombs, which apparently is really fucking creepy because Ishabal was like, nope, not going down there. This is last resort. Only guild witches have access to. And she says this
Yeah,
quote that,
specifically guild witches. That's like really
yes,
important that she makes this distinct point of view that only these types
hmm
are able to go. And so there's like a breakdown of all these different levels of witches, of how her clan is kind of broken out, and it matters because it's in terms of access. This matters.
yes. And she is a guild witch, but she still does it. She's like, nope. And she says this quote that's very interesting. There are secrets down there that should never be experienced by outsiders. So this isn't just like a
Hmm.
library. You're experiencing the past, which is, what does that even mean? What is this going to be like like in Harry Potter when he finds Tom Riddle's journal and like actually like hops into the past? Because
Or even
that's
in the
terrifying.
same vein. Yeah, it's straight up
Yeah.
terrifying, but also in the same vein of like going into the pool in Harry Potter where you like dunk your
hmm
head into the pensieve and you put the memory in there, like you get the memory of tears. And by the way, okay, if you haven't read like any of this yet, like I can't help you. Like it's too late.
Yeah. And then Saris gives them like the background of her actually meeting Zareth. And Ishbal has an issue with this because she's like, wait, your gods aren't real, only our gods. And this is where we're introduced to another idea of like, there are other gods. Not all these people believe in the same gods. And it's kind of I don't want to say a slap in the face, but it kind of shakes her because only her gods are
Yeah.
supposed to be real. And Saris explains to them that the other gods that the Evelians and the Fae that they worship, they want to wipe the entire slate clean, and Kingfisher and Saris are like chosen, if you will, to fix it. Because Zareth is like, no, let's not wipe the slate clean. Let's at least have like this one last hurrah. Because, I mean, imagine you have like this whole universe, and they're like, no, we're just gonna start fresh. And I know the gods are like, snap your finger, billions die, they don't care. But they still built this universe. So, yeah. So they're just explaining
Well,
that to
and who's
them.
to say that we're assuming here too that like Zareth, god of chaos and change, is like trustworthy in
Mhm,
full. And we know that the gods in general in most fantasy are fallible.
absolutely.
So we're gonna have to see how this plays out. And related to this is like there's a lot of conversation about the gods in Brimstone, but what I noticed is we don't get appearances from the gods like we did
No.
in Quicksilver or in the Gate and different chapters that we've seen where we have moments with the actual gods. We don't have that occur in this book. So we'll
Besides
talk more
the
about that when
demon
we get
god.
towards the end.
That's the
Right.
only one
But
we see, but like I feel like which I mean, he would have some insult to this, but I feel like he'd be kind of classified as more of a lesser god in terms of
mhm,
realms.
yeah.
But yeah, we don't actually get introduced to any of the new gods or any of the gods intervening. It's all just kind of talk. But the end of this chapter, what's important is we have our plan, what's going to take place for the next like quarter of the book. So Carrion and Fisher are going to Zilvaren to get Hayden, and Carrion was a smartass about this. But he's like, because Kingfisher did so well bringing Hayden back last time, and Saris is going to find the forge in Amentraeth and make more relics. So
Right. And one thing that's of note in chapter 10 is Kingfisher actually tells a story to the group of him actually meeting the gods and of us meeting the gods, which is really interesting to me because this was a very intimate moment for both of them. So the fact that he's telling them, hey, yeah, we did actually meet the gods and this is what happened was really interesting key part for me. I also thought it was really interesting. There's this quote that he says to the group, and he says, when my father fled with the Dianthus heir, meaning Carrion, one or more of the gods must have delayed their escape, at least their destination, anyway. Time continued here in Yuvelia, but in Zilvaren, I believe it stood still. This is a really interesting thing that he says that I highlighted, and I wanted to notate it when we go to chapter 10 and we're talking about how they're talking about the gods, and we have such few moments where the gods are mentioned. There's been a couple different instances where time has been mentioned, and there's this thought of like, why? Why would they do this? Because Carrion asks this question do the gods have some plan for me? And I think it's very evident that there's a plan for Carrion. I
Oh,
think
yeah.
he just asked this question without really giving it more thought of like I don't think he knew because he hadn't been told yet what happened to Ceres and Kingfisher that they had actually met the gods. It isn't just like a figure of speech. They met them in person,
Mhm.
like they've met them.
Right.
So there was just I was wondering like what your thought of that meant as far as time passage and I don't know. It was just a very weird spot in the book for me, so I was trying to kind of break it down and I was wondering what your thoughts were.
I think this is opening up a lot for Callie to do with the world, essentially, because
Mm,
now
mhm.
they're hopping to different realms as they're at the end entering the demon realm. So it's important that well, the reason why this was brought up, at least the age was brought up, was because Carrion says he's only 1,096 years old, where
Yes.
Renfis is like, no, you're definitely like 1,700 something like us. And he's like, no, no,
Correct.
no, that's not what's happening. So that's 650-ish years in some,
Off.
you know?
Like they're
Yeah,
off by that amount of
that's a
time.
lot. So I feel like because the Quicksilver to enter other realms, it must have some sort of change or it
Maybe a
the
cost.
gods yeah, a cost or depending on the reason or for how long that the travel takes because obviously between when you go in between Kalish and Imitreya, there's like no time difference. It's like that we know of at least. And there's also a mention that
Yeah, because you're
when
all in Yvelia. Yeah.
right. Fisher also mentions that when he is in Zilvaren, that the clocks are weird. Like they're different. Their passage of time in general is different. That could just be their two sons. And so their years are longer, you know? It could be that sort of thing.
Yeah. Or also too, like I took it as they read a different type of clock. The clock that they
Mhm.
read is a sundial and very simplistic versus the clock that they read in college is like an actual to the minute clock, like a
Right.
grandfather
But if you
clock,
think
like a
about it,
traditional clock. So I don't know. I took when because Sarah mentions that later too about how easy it is to tell time in Zolvarin
mhm,
versus how complicated it is to tell time in college. And I didn't know if that was just the difference between technology or if it was a difference between truly being able to tell time, to your point.
I right,
Interesting to consider.
I think it has more to do with location. I mean, think about our solar system. A year is 365 days, but in other planets, a year is longer or a year's
Mm,
shorter amount of days. So it's
yes.
just we're in a different realm, and Callie's painting that picture, and maybe she's setting up that picture to set up book 3 because if they're in
Yeah.
another realm again, that means time is probably passing in Avelia very differently. So when they come
Mhm.
back, there might be more. The state of Avelia might be more jarring. So I think that's at least what I
Or
took
no
from it.
time passed at all, one or the
Hmm.
other. Yeah, who knows who's to say what the true passage of time will be wherever they go next.
Hmm.
This is a interesting thing. Because who knows how long they sat with the gods in the first place, but there
Hmm.
didn't seem to be much of a passage of time at all. They dropped them back in with it seemingly seconds. And we talked about that when we read
It's
Quicksilver,
probably
where
intentional too,
in
though.
oh yeah, so like whenever Kingfisher falls in and goes with the gods in the gates part 1 and 2, a lot of time passes. He's having a long conversation, he's walking around, all of this, but when he wakes back up and he gets Nemerel, it's as if nothing happened. There was no passage of time. It's like he blinked and he's now back, fighting where he was. Didn't fall out for a long period of time at all. So I think it is like her way of trying to describe how she's going to set up time and be able to manipulate it. As an author, this gives her a lot more leeway of being able to show like, well, hey, I established that time can move how time moves. She's giving us her laws, which are fluid. It's smart. I think it's going to give her a lot more bounds of creativity as we continue. Okay.
Agreed.
I was just curious what your thoughts were. Chapter 11, we get into this next part here where there's a plan now for Carrion and Kingfisher to go on their journey, which again is why I named our drink the Shrek and Donkey Show, because these two are a mess when
It's
they
part of
go
the
on
book,
their trip together.
to be
Obviously,
honest.
we know, yeah. Well, Saris can't go because Saris can't be in the sun. So we have two sons in Zilvaren, therefore we cannot have any vampires join us on our trip over there. And we need to go to get Hayden, and there's a couple more things that they need to figure out as far as the feeders and things like that when they go to Zilvaren. Because
Well, she has a
remember
whole
in
court to
episode,
rule.
yeah, I mean she's
Like,
got things to do.
yeah,
You know,
a
there's a
little
few
bit.
things that she's got. So Sarah opens the Quicksilver again for Fisher and Carrion and says, "You guys need to return in 3 days' time." Lorith is training Saris on how to fight using Solace because she's having issues with the weight of Solace because Solace is a gigantic sword. It was not made for her. It was made for Fisher's dad, who's obviously a huge freaking dude. So this, even though it's her sword, it wasn't crafted for her. And there's this frustration she has of saying like, I need to be able to wield this thing. It's mine, and it's a show of power that I do so. So she makes it a point to ask Lorith. Well, first she asks Fisher to train with her, and Fisher's like, no, I can't really train you in the way that you need to. Lorith would be like a suitable partner because I love you too much to train with you, basically. I'm not going to push you to the brink that you need to be pushed to. So there's a moment where Saris also realizes that Lorith promised Fisher he would stay, and Fisher made him promise that he would stay to protect Saris because Fisher also wasn't just going to dip out to another realm, like leaving Saris unguarded.
Of course not.
So he's like, no, somebody from the Lupo Prolia needs to be here to monitor Saris and look out for her. Uh,
Mhm.
and he's like, all right, if she's pissed about this, of course. And he's like, all right, well, like, if you would just get over it, I'm going to tell you the whole story of like what happened at Ajahn Gate so that you understand, what's going on here. And this is where, again, if you haven't read the bonus chapters that are available on Callie's website, these prequel chapters, I implore you to please go read these because they only briefly tell you this story in this, chapter 11, but it's these are two very
Barely.
long chapters that are
Yeah.
yeah, it's a brief glimpse. Whereas there's two very long chapters that actually describe this in complete full detail. So you're missing out if you haven't learned about Meryl and how part of Meryl's soul is actually tied to Nimmerel, and that's why the sword is named Nimmerel. It's because it's actually named for Run's sister. And there's a lot that goes on that is very important that ties to Nimmerel as a sword itself and its true power versus it only being a god sword. There's other factors at play of the power of Kingfisher's sword, as well as the dragon, of course, and Onam Shakayan, and just so much information that you need to go back and read if you haven't read these. Lorith takes Saris into a tavern called Fool's Paradise. And we find out that the owner of Fool's Paradise is none other than Mr. Taladeus, of course. And he
Mhm.
owns the pub here. And we find out that Lorith didn't pay a tab from 160 years ago, God forbid. And Aragon, this owner, is like, you need to leave. And so these vampires come and they try to get him to pay, and Tal storms in. And, he's like, I own this bar as of 50 years ago. So, you need to forgive the debt. And this guy's pissed because he's been there way longer than Tal has been alive, basically, or been turned. And he's
Right.
freaking pissed about doing this. But more importantly, what's interesting here is you get a little bit more of a glimpse of Tal and like his inner workings of that he owns places. Like we didn't know anything really about him at all. So
No.
we're starting to get in chapter 11 a little bit more about Tal and trying to understand it. And the way I'm like waiting for some like romantic comments to come from him because I don't know what this says about me, but I just keep thinking of the bond of like vampires being romantic or sexual because that's what I've read so many times when you think of a turning. But I just got like the truth of how in this series, Callie thinks about turning, and it's very much more like a paternal thing or like a
Mhm.
brotherly thing or a
At least in
family
this
member
case,
versus yes, there is
because
no in this case there's no sexual bond there at all, even the way that he
Mhm.
talks to Saris.
Right, and Tal even mentions that a lot of the cases are or can be sexual. I feel like we get
Mhm.
that more with, like, Zorvina and how she's, like, obsessed with Malcolm, and I feel like that's
Mhm.
more sexual in nature, unfortunately for Tal. But yeah, in this case, like, it doesn't always have to be that. I did find it really interesting that Lorth was in a bar in the Cogs 160 years ago. Why was he there? what business did he have there? Because we know that they've been trying to find Foley, right? Was he there to get Foley and he just couldn't? Or
Maybe.
was there another reason why he was there? I had like big question marks there. Like,
I did too, because I was like, why the fuck does he know? How does he know in Ementreia to show Cerys where a pub is?
right.
Like, how do you know where this is? Like,
Because
how are
Tal
you
didn't
like,
know.
oh yeah, this is where the vampire pub is. Let me run you down to the vampire pub and let's get a drink.
Yeah.
Like, what? And then they know him. Of course.
Yeah. Then they were like, oh yeah. And he knows the setting is very interesting. Very much. I mean, all the other vampires are definitely having sexual fun there. But no.
That's
But
fair.
we also get to learn that vampires regenerate. Because Lord cuts off one's hand and like shoves it in his mouth. And he's like, I'm going to have a like little nubby baby hand. Which later, the same vampire we see him, he does have like a little baby hand. I'm like, that is one, that's funny that he has a baby hand. Two, but that's interesting that they can basically regenerate. I wonder to what extent. Like, you know, obviously I feel like with a decapitation, you can't really do that. But like if it's your other limbs or whatever, then, you know, that's not too bad. So,
well, yeah, I mean, I think it would be pretty painful.
So that leads us into chapter 12. Tal questions Cerys about Fisher's whereabouts because he's like, where the fuck did they go? Because Cerys is keeping Tal in the dark for a lot of different things. And this is where we learn that Tal can tell when she lies because she sends off a blue aura because, you know, that's the maker. And also he knows that she's in pain. So he shows her his arms. He tells him about Adina, and, you know, the whole thing about Adina, he gives some insight on how that she's basically staying in the realm by sheer force of will to make sure that Cerys got this information. So, you know, she took her job as a seer very seriously, her love for Kingfisher, and just kind of, you know, wanting to prepare Cerys as much as possible because she knew that she wouldn't get any preparation if she did not. And we also learned that Cerys's runes, they smolder, and that shows that she has access to elemental fire magic. And this is where I think that when she harnesses it, obviously she's going to have the ability to create Brimstone. And she's going to be key here in the next book. But she also has regenerative magic. So she has all these little magics that's really cool for her. And you know, we're just getting started understanding what her magic is. And then we end this chapter with this idea that Tal wants to disavow her and sever their bond because it's really uncomfortable for him that, you know, he's like bonded to her, and it's, you know, it creates an uncomfortable situation with Kingfisher, and he wants to respect that. And he also doesn't want to undermine her in the court. So he's like, I'll just sever the bond and it'll be okay. And she's not like thinking much about it. She's like, yeah, that's a good idea. And we're not, you know, when I read this, I'm like, oh, okay. I wonder if this is like let me just say something, or if there's a ritual. There's a ritual. But, you know, Cerys is like, yeah, that's great. It's great. It's great. Yeah. You're going to be second in command anyways. And then when she says she felt his sadness and then his relief, I was like,
weird.
There's mixed.
What's going on
You're
here?
not.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, it's hard to trust Tal here because he's giving off these different feelings, and you're not supposed to trust him, but you kind of are. You know, he's doing something.
It's a weird situation.
Behind. Yeah. So, but that's how we end chapter 12.
And there was a specific highlight I had from Tal that says, the way your runes smoldered would indicate that you have access to elemental fire magic. Once harnessed, that will be incredibly useful. No? And the fact that your hands are healed now after the damage I just witnessed implies that you also have regenerative magic, physical magic, power over the body. At some point, you may be able to heal others with your abilities. And the way that this is like very clear foreshadowing of what we're going to see at the end of this book with Onyx is just something that I was like, okay, let me file that away, and immediately highlighted this part in chapter 12. And to your point, Michelle, yes, it's also indicative of what's going to happen with Brimstone specifically. In my mind, that's what I think is happening for sure. We also know that the only beings that can like harness Brimstone that we know of at this time are dragons. So it's going to be interesting to see how that's going
Right.
to pan out.
We also do end up finding out that the fire sprites also have brimstone as well.
They're made
So
of it.
yep, basically just those two beings plus Saris, probably, definitely.
Yeah, but the fire sprites only have a limited amount of brimstone, and once they utilize it from their life source, they can donate some to each other, but they cannot regenerate it. There's no way that they
Right.
can create it. Um, so important to know. Chapter 13, we are back with Carrion and Kingfisher in a Kingfisher point of view chapter, and they get out of the Quicksilver pool, and you know that they're going to be met with a shit ton of guards, of Madra's guards, because they're trying to get out of the palace. So they come back through the Quicksilver pool that him and Ceres entered back in the first book, and they're coming up out of there knowing that it's going to be well guarded. And Fisher had told Carrie in this, and the way they have this banter as they're like trying to get out of the palace, and Kingfisher's like, "Oh my god." And it literally reminded me so much because you talked about this too, Michelle, of like Kingfisher is Shrek and Donkey is Carrion, because Donkey's just like, "Hey, and what if we did this?" And Shrek is like, "Oh my god, shut up." And so
Shut
this is
up.
exactly like, yeah, this is exactly Carrion and Kingfisher, because Carrion's just like, "Why are we moving so fast? How are we gonna make it through here?" And da da da, like just like so annoying. And
Mhm.
Kingfisher's like, "Oh my god, like yeah, there's gonna be guards. Like, obviously, this is where we came through. I told you about this. Like, why aren't
Right.
you paying attention?" Like, he's just like annoyed. Um, and so then there's Fisher casting his shadows out so he can make it. They can make it out of this area, and they're sprinting, and he glamours them, and then they like. It reminded me of Aladdin, where he's like running through the city, and he like falls through tents and stuff as he's like running off of, like, this is what this reminds me of. They like jump through a window and like through this like thing and like fall down, and like, I'll just
Yeah.
this is what I'm imagining in my head as this is all going down. And so Fisher guides them away, but then he can't really do much because Kyrian is the one who knows the city. Fisher knows it sort of, but he doesn't know Zilvaren like the back of his hand the way Kyrian does. So Kyrian takes him. They have to find more silver. They're in desperate need of silver to create more relics. So they need to find silver to bring back to Ceres, and they also need to Hayden. So they go to Brigand's Bank is where they're going to try to go because Carrion owns this. And Fisher's initial thought was like, "Oh, I'm going to go to the treasury of Madra. We're going to go find like her treasury." And Karen is like, actually has a moment of like clarity where he's just like, "Fisher, well, if we could go to her treasury, don't you think like everybody would have already done that like a while ago?
Right.
Like, what? Hello." And
I'm
Fisher's
sure
like,
he
"Oh yeah, I
tried at
guess." And
some
he's
point
like,
too, anyways.
"Yeah, I'm sure." Yeah. And so then he's like, "No, let's just go to this bank." And he's like, "Why would we go to a bank? Like, how are we going to get in there?" And he's like, "Oh, well, I own it.
I own
So,
it.
we can do that." And so they have to go through these underground nasty ass tunnels that are basically like sewers as well. And it's like horrible. And Carrion's like talking about how he has a sense of smell now, and like he didn't really realize it
Smells
before.
awful.
And so it's like a horrible, disgusting. And they end up at Cala's because of course they do. And if we remember correctly, this is the bar from the third that Carrion always frequented and is known for. And they're looking for Eric, who is the other owner of this bank. And Fisher's like, "Why are we at a bar? Like, we have all this shit to do. I'm not going to sit here and wait." And he's like, "No, you will wait because I know he's going to be here." And he's like, "What do you mean you know he's going to be here?" He's like, "Well, he comes here after work every day." And he's like, "Well, how do you know
Mhm.
he's going to come here this day?" And he's like, "Because he comes here after work every day. Like,
Mhm.
this is what he does. He comes here." And so, of
There isn't
course,
much to do in
he
the third
does.
anyways. So
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
drink. You go to
Carrion,
work, you drink. And at Kala's, what they do is they realize that Eric probably took the money and ran with it because Carrion's been gone for fucking forever. So they wait for Voreth Shah, who is the Vault Breaker, or who Carrion believes is the Vault Breaker, who would have done this job. And as soon as, you know, they see Voreth Shah sees them, which we've met Voreth Shah before. He's also like the snake oil creepy guy from the third
Mhm.
as well. He has his like, he believes in like magic and he's like crazy. But we only got a glimpse of him for I think it was in the one of the first couple of chapters, and then that's it. And as soon as Voreth Shah sees Carrion, so we think, he ends up running. But really, Fisher's like, he wasn't running because he saw Carrion. He's running because he saw me. So obviously he understands something with the Fae here. And Carrion's like, oh God, now I'm going to have to chase him down. And yeah, so then they go and chase him down.
Right? And chapter 14 starts. This is where we had talked about in episode 1 of Brimstone that this rot is just like expanding at a rapid rate. So the chapter opens with this total known dead count, total known infected, and this hectares of landmass that are also infected. And of course, like, you're not going to really comprehend this data unless you have like the data of how many hectares covers the whole landmass, how many people there are, and all of this. But you do understand that it's growing, and that's the key point here. Key takeaway is that the rot is expanding and it's growing. They don't have a handle on it, and it's not good. So that's kind of like the message that you're getting right at the jump, that Saris is getting this information from the people who are guiding her in Amentreth to let her know kind of what's going on. And so this is what she's getting as feedback, and from Kalish as well. So we know that she's finding out this data, and it's just not great. So Tal is guiding her through the palace now, and that she's getting information from him in the sense that why these vampires fear her, and then the different things about that they believe about prophecies and things that people have spoke to about her being this great representation of change, all of which are completely true, by the way. And they just haven't come to fruition yet. So they do have a true reason to be fearful. But finally, Tal is like, here's where the library is. They end up going to this library, and it's one of Malcolm's favorite places. He hides it way the fuck up in the sky, 573 steps. It's way up there. And these libraries contain magic. All libraries contain magic, even libraries that don't specialize in such things, because what was a book if not a portal into another realm, another time, another life even? So there's this wonderful quote here that talks about the significance of libraries, and naturally we love that. So that was really unique, and I liked that part of the story. But this library has these thing called stargazers, which interesting name, stargazers. And they're these little paper birds that are nesting in the rafters all over the library, and they've been there for over 1,000 years. How about that? Some of them are folded and are sparked into magic, and their magic has just remained. They fly all over the place, and they are notated at the very beginning of why they're there. And the way that I was like, that's interesting. Why is she telling us that? But I didn't piece it together. Did you piece it together?
No. So when I started piecing it together was when that one bird, one of the stargazers,
Yes,
like literally attacked Saris. I'm like, oh, okay, these things are important. I like their paper. So I'm like, okay, this has to be like a book or something. So that's when I was like, my light bulb. Yeah. But here I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. Origami.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I had no
No,
idea. Yeah.
Mm-mm.
And also, like, we're getting introduced to other stuff. So there's other things that are happening here. Alga is who we get introduced to, which, if we remember, she's one of the Lords of Midnight, and she's the keeper of records. So she's also the one that's this like old witch, but she's not old. And she, is there because she did dark magic and on and on. But she's the keeper of records, and she's super nice to Saris when she talks to her. And she has this cat that's like this shadow cat. Oh yeah, she's super rude. But she has this like shadow cat, and have all these books regarding alchemy, because Belicon never touched any of it, and Malcolm hoarded this information, so he didn't destroy any of it. So we find out that the library actually has a shit ton of books about alchemy. Only problem is Sarah has no idea like where to start to look for this, for anything. So she really doesn't know what to do. So we meet Guru, like I said, her shadow cat, and then for Alga to help, she is going to force Saris to pay in blood. And Guru lives off of blood. Cool. So she puts like diluted blood milk together for this cat. And then I'm just thinking to myself, like, how many times are you going to be able to pay this girl? Like, you're going to keep paying for books with your blood? Like, this can't be sustainable. So I realized like pretty quickly that there was going to have to be another way that this panned out, because I was like, she's not going to be able to keep doing this. So while Alga retrieves the books that she asked for, Saris is attacked by another vampire, Foley, who we find out is Foley. We don't know this at this time. But Saris feels a wave of power and accidentally blasts a hole in the whole library. So that's cool.
Giant asshole.
Um, yeah, a giant asshole. Great.
Yep. And that leads to chapter 15. So 15 switches back to Zilvaren. We have Fisher and Carrion, who are in Vorath's shop now, because Vorath is like, I'll take you to the treasure. It'll be fine. Trust me. And Fisher's like, I don't fucking trust this
trust
guy.
me.
But like, Carrion's like, fine. So Fisher obviously notices that Vorath is very, very wary of him. He agrees to escort him, and as essentially escorts them through the third up to the tallest like clock tower that they have. And as they venture up, they see a dead Fae's body. Like, they see the fangs and everything. I'm like, two things here. One, turn around. Two,
Yes.
how many Fae have been in Zilvaren? Like, this is where
Yeah.
I feel like Callie's having us question. Like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
it's not just Carrion. It's not just Saris. Like, there is a lot more hiding here than we know. And Fisher immediately is like, this is... don't really
Not
feel
good.
good going up these steps. And Carrion didn't sense the magic, probably because he's just not used to that at all. Like, you know, he hasn't been trained or anything. And they get to the top of the stairs, and Carrion gets pushed in by Vorath. He's like, sorry, but, you know, this is the way. This is what had to be done. And essentially, they are in a demon trap, or at least Carrion for right now. He's in a demon trap for Joshin, who is the demon of the desert and the dark realm. Essentially, he makes you have nightmares. And
Vorath is just like psychotic.
Oh yeah, he's like, yes, master.
Yeah, we're
but
like,
Fisher notes
what's going on here?
Fisher notes that demon trap is old magic, Alchemiran magic. So alchemists are the ones that create this demon trap. So Vorath had come to Zilvaren at some point. Someone brought him here from the demon realm, and an alchemist trapped him here. So again,
an alchemist trapped him here. Interesting.
Right. We know shit about Zilvaren, and Carrion isn't the only Fae, and Saris is definitely not the only alchemist here. And we end up getting more of a glimpse into that a little bit later on when we get reintroduced to Elroy. But here, you're supposed to have a bunch of question marks. And
right. There's a whole lot of like action happening here, which we always should be weary of with Callie Hart, because there's a whole bunch of other things that are being said that she's just like telling you directly, and you're just glazing over because you're like,
because there's
shit,
a million
we're
scorpions.
in a fucking we're in a scorpion pit, literally. So you're like distracted by these little comments that are being made, but they're really important.
And Carrion's flipping the fuck out because he's like, what's that sound? What is that? Why are my hands stuck? I'm just here. So his hands are literally stuck. Like, he's stuck
Glued
on the ground.
Yeah, he can't get out.
So
and Fisher the whole
like
time, his inner monologue. No,
and
Fisher's monologue is just like, shut the fuck up, Carrion. Like, you're obviously like trapped. The demons are gonna come get you.
He debates on leaving him for a second. Like, he has a glimpse of
he does.
I could just
and
leave
then he's
him.
Like, fuck, I can't.
Saris would be so pissed.
Is gonna be pissed. I can't do that. I'm gonna have to freaking take this idiot with me.
Yep.
Because he doesn't even really care. It's interesting to me because he would think he would care that he's the heir, but like he doesn't.
No.
At all. He doesn't care about that. He cares that Saris is like gonna be upset. He doesn't care that Carrion's the actual heir, and like him dying could be bad. He's just like, no, I guess I'm gonna have to fucking save his ass because of Saris. So we go back to chapter 16, and there's a lot of jumping around in these next few chapters because we kind of jump back and forth from action-packed moments from Saris and from Kingfisher in the time that they're apart here. And we have to remember that this is a very short amount of time. It's only been like maybe 12 hours, 15 hours at this point that they've been apart. It's not like that much time. And they don't even make it the full 3 days. So Saris has fully tied to a chair now that he tried to attack her and didn't successfully. And Foley is like, what did you do to Kingfisher? Because he knows that she's this vampire and now she's this queen. He doesn't trust her, and he doesn't trust vampires at all. And Foley's basically been holed up in this library for hundreds of years now. So he's read every single book there and has his little rituals and his old man ways. And like, he's just been chilling up in this library with this cat and this witch and whatever. He's among the books, and he does not trust Saris at all. And he's like, what did you do to Kingfisher? And this is how you find out that he knows who Kingfisher is. We don't know. Saris doesn't know who Foley is because she hasn't been part of the dialogue and conversations that we were part of as readers. So Foley is the first time that she's meeting him or knowing of him is in these types of moments. And Lorith comes up and is like, hey, Saris, she's not bound. She's not who you think she is. She didn't do anything to Kingfisher because he's like, why do you have Fisher's sword or like little knife? Because he recognizes it. And Foley is not bound by this court either because she's like, how could he attack me? Because remember, if we go back to the beginning of the book, she made this command that was very clear. Like, if you're a vampire, basically, if you're of this court, you will not attack me. You will not attack my mate. You will not attack my friends. Well, how did Foley attack her? And it's because he never pledged himself to this court after he was turned, even though he technically should have. He never does because there's this quote from Lorith that's really important that it says, no matter what, a wolf never becomes a leech. And so this is a quote from the Lupoprolia, which of course we know that Foley was a member of, and Tal had turned to Foley in the past after Ajin Gate. So he's literally been sitting here in this library, unacceptant of the fact that he is a vampire, and so unaccepting of it to the point where his teeth are gold, like his fangs. He is not actually able to utilize them to drink blood. He survives on the blood of animals. Very, very, very Twilighty. He does not. He has never actually drinking blood from a human or a fae. So it's just an interesting part of this chapter 16 here where we find out a little bit more about Foley and where the heck Foley has been this whole time.
Chapter 17 now, we're back in Zilvaren, and the millions of scorpions are now morphing into like one giant demon scorpion.
And they've been stinging this shit out of Carrion and Kingfisher both. Just like the little ones have just been like
and the stinging injects venom, and the venom ultimately will eventually kill them. Not before making them like hyper hallucinate and like go completely crazy from their nightmares. But as Kingfisher is like describing the demon, it's as he's like being fully formed. So you don't even get like a full glimpse of like the terror of him because he's like so massive and the scorpions are just skittering around trying to form it. It's disgusting. I'm just happy it's not spiders. That would have been.
I mean, it's pretty close. He still has like the torso of a person and like the half fang.
And like he has stingers on his head. And then he has like one human hand and like one like claw thing. No, it's not.
It's
and then he has a stinger and like 8 legs he's gross.
I can't wait there's gonna be fan art, I'm sure, of somebody trying to like draw this thing, and I'm like, look, we just don't need to. We don't need to do that.
No.
Good.
So Kingfisher, he knows who Joshin is because he has a flashback to like when his mom would like tell him bedtime stories, and that's like really funny of the Fae that they tell bedtime stories of like the demons and what they're going to do to you. It's like okay, but he realizes from the story with his mom that Joshin doesn't like light, so he has to bring light into this tower, and the room in the tower is completely warded, so he has to essentially break a hole in the wall, and he's finding it hard because his shadows are like skittering away. Like he can't use them on the ward. And
right. And remember that this was created again by an alchemist. So interesting to note that his Kingfisher shadows are not working here. I think it's really telling because we also know that Kingfisher shadows are basically magic of a demon realm. And I think it's interesting here to note that Saris, who is an alchemist, and Kingfisher shadows
are
fire
magic and shadow. It's like they contradict each other, or yin yang each other,
light and dark.
Yeah, continue. Imagine that. So the scorpions, ultimately, because of the venom, are making Fisher and Carrion hallucinate. And Fisher's seeing his mother, but his mother is like, she's really mean and is just talking down to him the entire time. Carrion's having his own little, like, you start realizing like he's seeing people that aren't there because he's like, are you seeing dead people? And then so Fisher's still trying to like punch a hole in the wall, and then as like his mind's like going crazy, he realizes like, oh, there's blood on the wall, and he uses the blood to make a break rune on the shield that's on the wall, and he ends up breaking it. and then he breaks a hole in the wall,
Right.
which is great because the scorpions start like skittering away because they're like, free, I'm free. And Fisher's like, no, we're gonna bring in light, so you can't go anywhere, and you're going to stay here. So Karen kills Shaw for trapping him, which I'm like, good for him because he like
Finally.
breaks his neck and everything. And Fisher decides to make a deal with Joshin because he has to be kept alive. They need the anti-venom. They don't trust that Shaw has the anti-venom. So they make the deal as your life for our secrets, a secret and a promise that you'll be released and not caught in another demon trap. So again, wording is really important. You will be released and not caught in another demon trap. Didn't say when, didn't say where, but it will happen.
Yeah.
And Fisher finds a single scorpion and puts him in a box and then demands the secret from Joshin. And the secret is, where there is light, there is always darkness, Shadow Weaver. To kill a queen, you'll need to visit the darkest of places, which is clear foreshadowing. To kill the queen, I'm thinking Madra, you have to go to the darkest of places, the demon realm. You'll need to strike a deal far more costly than this one if you hope to succeed. And the beast who lies in wait for you there will not be so easy to trick as me. She will eat you whole, Shadow Weaver. And she will tear away your soul and feed on it for decades. Again, they're about to get in some shit in this demon realm. And then Fisher lights the demon on fire. Except the one little scorpion.
And I think this is completely foreshadowing the last chapters with Ceres and Fisher entering and the dragon being the one who could eat him whole. That's what I thought it was, but I don't know if you thought the same thing.
Thinking back, I don't think, because he's saying that a beast who lies in wait for you there will not be so easy to trick as me. She will eat you whole, Shadow Weaver. So yeah, it could be the dragon. It could be there's someone else that they have to make a deal with. We know Kingfisher's dad is in this demon realm, but there might be someone else there that they have to make a deal with to stop the rot.
Yeah, maybe. I kind of felt like they made a deal with her, with the dragon, to kind of get past her. They had to kind of like figure out how they were going to get past her. And they ultimately did.
Did it work though?
But
did it?
Wasn't great.
No,
but then
I don't
it kind of
think
goes to what. Nah, I agree. Maybe there's more to it than that, and we're going to see it in book 3. We'll have to see. Chapter 18 we bounce back to Foley, Ceres, and Lorith in the library. And we find out again that Foley's been hiding in the library since he was turned. And Foley still is very untrusting of Ceres. This continues until Foley meets with Fisher way later in the book. But he does not have any trust for Ceres, regardless of what Lorith has said. It's not enough information. He needs to like see Kingfisher himself. And that there's some insult there about how Ceres has never heard of Foley. He feels like, hey, you're supposedly Kingfisher's mate and you've never heard of me? How is that possible? And Lorith is kind of like, look, there's been a lot going on. Like, I don't know if you know this, but there's like been a lot.
And we tried to write you. They tried to write to him.
We wrote you like a lot. And so this whole time I'm thinking, he wrote you. Who's in charge of missives?
Vina.
Who is in charge of this? Yes, this lovely lady that we all know and love, who also happens to be a Lord of Midnight. And she's not one to be trusted either. So she's super nice. And she's the straight up bitch. So all the letters have not gone to Foley, even though it was her requirement and her duty to deliver them. She deliberately did not do so. So we're going to see, this is again foreshadowing that there will be some confrontation here where Ceres is going to have to deal with her for this failure to do her job and title. So Ceres ends up leaving. She takes the books that Algot finally gives her, and much to her dismay, Algot doesn't want to give books to anyone. And Foley
they're not
says,
supposed to leave
like,
the library at all.
Right. Yeah. And then Foley is like, look, you need to rest. Because he's like, you look like you've been up for days. And Ceres is over here like, I'm the best I've ever looked ever. What are you talking about? Like, I've literally looked better. I look like I've eaten more than I ever looked like in Zilvaren. Like, this guy's over here telling me I look like shit. Like, what the hell? And he's like, no, you have to rest. Otherwise, if you're an alchemist, there's no way you're going to burn out, basically, because your runes and stuff, like, you need to rest to be able to repair what your body's done to itself. And so I have to think for her, this is wild because her fae form, which is still new, and then her vampire form are now merged together. This fae slash vampire, like they're basically opposed to one another. She can literally stop her heart and restart it if she wants to. And then she's an alchemist on top of all of that. So she's just like, doesn't know what to do with herself. And we see a lot more of this as the book continues, where we understand that it's so much change for once for her. And she really just has a hard time grappling with this. And it frustrated me as a reader because I got very annoyed with her. And I would text you and be like, Sarah's the fuck. And like, I would just be
Yeah.
like telling you, like, I'm so annoyed with her. I understand why, but it did not make it any easier as a reader. That is for sure. So Lorith finally is like, okay, Foley, thank you for telling her like that she needs to go and sleep. And we also know, by the way, Foley, that your grandfather was an alchemist. Will you help us? I know you're not a biggest fan of her, but you and I are brothers. Will you help her? And he agrees, but he's like, first she needs to go to bed. So that ends our chapter.
Now we're going to hop into important quotes that we thought or some theories we might have. We've already kind of interlooped those as we were chatting organically, but there's some in chapter 13 that I actually wanted to emphasize here. So one, we have Fisher commenting a lot in chapter 13 about what's going on in Zilvaren. And the first thing is, there are realms and worlds amid the void of this universe that are entirely barren of magic. And here we have the contrast of Zilvaren, who has a kernel of magic. And this is linked to the wheel and the circular shape of the wheel, and how the wards of that she created, or Madra created, that because the wheel has always existed when there were alchemists there and when there's magic there. And then she created the spokes ultimately. And we come to find out that this was very intentional to siphon magic here. And I just think she's mentioning realms. She's mentioning worlds. There's comparisons here. So again, it's important that this world is vast, that we're not just in Nivelia or in Zilvaren. We're going to literally entire realms. And it's interesting that Fisher even knows that there's so much research done through like the alchemists and through his understanding that they would know, I can't draw on magic here. I wonder if that's telling for the next book to see what will happen.
Yeah, and what it made me wonder too is the number of wards that it's been segregated into seems specific.
Very intentional.
Are these places that Madra, is it coincidental that she named this number, or are those places she's been? Are they places that she's drawn magic from? Is she using that from what, or is there a power behind the number that she used? I'm wondering what the rationale is for why she segregated it into wards. And I think that might be something we might find more out about when we get into book 3. I think there's a very good reason we don't have a map. I think there's a reason why Callie wants us to really remain focused on in particular, and she may draw us a map, but I think it's a circular round ring, and we now know and understand why this is. What's beyond Zilvaren, though? Where is she? Like, what is beyond this specific place? And it's just interesting to me how it's only this one city and we don't really know anything else about this landmass that she's on, or what planet, or who knows what. Like, there's just so much we don't understand or know about where Madra is and what existed there on this plane before. There's also in chapter 13, now that you bring this up, a quote that I wanted to talk about where the Quicksilver says, "The smart mouth is not so smart anymore. The smart mouth sounds stupid." And it's talking about Carrion. And Carrion goes, shit, we're definitely going to die. And Carrion is like literally choking Kingfisher. And Kingfisher's like, "You're choking me, Carrion. Let go so I can move." And he's like, "The smuggler relinquish his hold on my armor," because he like calls him the smuggler all the time.
The smuggler.
And so like transitioning from like
not the air.
This is what I mean is like he literally like, he's like, "The fucking smuggler is choking me," and like he like keeps calling him like the smuggler. He doesn't call him anything nice. And so it'll be like the smuggler's growing on me like later, in the book. And it's just funny to me because even the Quicksilver is like making fun of Carrion. And so it just
Oh,
cracked
yeah.
me up that and we also find out later in the book too, like, why Carrion got the name Carrion, and
Mhm.
what because obviously, Carrion, the word itself means death, basically. It just means, like, dead carcass, yeah, is what
Mhm.
it means. So there's
Useless.
always yeah, and so,
I
like,
mean,
there's
he's
always
kind
been
of
this, like, thought of,
dead
like,
weight.
what does Carrion what does it like, what does the word mean, and why would someone have that name? And anyways, so I digress. While there are some really deep parts of chapter 13 all happening. You're learning a
Mhm.
lot while you're going on this journey with Shrek and Donkey. You're also like laughing hysterically a lot. And
Oh,
I
yeah.
had to laugh at that part too, where the Quicksilver was basically like, the smart mouth is not so smart now. It's like, even the Quicksilver is like
I
taking
wonder
a
if
jab.
right, I wonder if Carrion's Quicksilver, like, his sword, like, gets tired of his shit too. Because,
Simon, no,
it's
Simon's like along for the ride. He like is here for the jokes, I feel like.
right.
That sword.
We'll see. There's also one other quote in chapter 13 on the vein of carrion. So Fisher comments that the Dianthus line possessed more magic than many of the other houses in Avelia. Essentially, Carrion's supposed to be one of the most powerful fae in the entire realm of Avelia, and he's a fucking
Mhm.
dumbass. And Fisher even makes a comment that he thinks Carrion can harness fire also. He makes a little comment. He's like, I don't have
Yes.
fire. I can't set light to anything, which would be really useful. But I have a feeling Carrion can, but I can't ask him of that because he's being stung by like a million scorpions.
Yeah.
And we do find later on like some of his power, but I think this is telling of he also has a lot more power than he
Oh
realizes
yeah.
because, he doesn't know anything. And I wonder if Fisher is going to help him unlock some of that because he's like, I would have him try, but we're kind of busy right now.
Yeah, and I wonder too if
So
it's telling of book 3 of, like, if we're gonna get some Kingfisher, Carrion, uh,
now that they're
magic
like
practice time.
mild besties,
Yeah,
now that
low-key
they're
besties.
friends, like he
Yeah,
missed
they
me.
might get some magic practice time, yeah. And so my question for Callie, if we had her on the show again, would be, like, what percentage of Carrion's magic have we actually seen in books 1 and 2? So I'm
I'm
just
sure
gonna
she'll be
file
like
that away if and
5%,
when yeah,
5,
literally.
10%, maybe.
Well, because I remember when she got interviewed for Ceres and someone asked her how much of the magic of Ceres had we seen in book 1, and she said it was less than 10%.
Yeah.
So that was really interesting to understand, like and I think that's a note to me, that's very obvious that in the same vein as, like, Carrion is very obvious, like, he's not gonna
Mhm.
be the heir without having some magic that he doesn't understand that he can control and tap into. The other we know he has lesser magics because he's used those quite a bit,
Mhm.
and the only other thing is, like, if he's over 1,000 and so years old and he doesn't have the time that Fisher's had to, like, hone what he can do, it'll be interesting to see how much time they spend in book 3 if how that's gonna, like, pan out. So that would be interesting to me to see for sure.
Yeah, I definitely agree on that. So, another important thing that I thought was interesting was when Joshin was talking in chapter 17, he can speak Old Fae, and Fisher's very much like, no, you are a demon. You can't do that. You're not supposed to be able to speak the language. And again, this was foreshadowing because when they enter the demon realm, Fisher's talking. Ceres is like, what the fuck's going on this entire time? Like, this is a whole
Mhm.
different world, whole different language. But here, there is an important quote also that Fisher emphasizes that the demons and the Fae are both bound by oaths. So again, I think this is one foreshadowing for like what he did to Joshin. But two, this is going to be foreshadowing of what's going to happen in book 3 when they're in the demon realm. There's going to be some sort of oath that they're going to have to use a twist of words to get things done to solve the problem of the rod and get
Mhm.
what they need
Mhm.
from the demons here. And it's going to be because of the oaths or the the trickery of words, which Fisher's really good at.
We also know that the Lupoprolia is oath-bound to Belicon, and they would have been both bound to whoever basically sat on the throne, but it unfortunately is Belicon. So therefore it is Belicon, but it's also telling of the Fae oath they have there as well. So I know that there's a jab there that this demon is, like,
Right.
going into, but I do think it's could also be taken as foreshadowing to what's going to happen with Fisher's Oathbound that he has.
I wonder when Carrion ascends the throne and then they become oathbound to him. Like, I'm just trying to think of how Fisher be like, what the actual fuck? And Carrion's
Yes.
like, I'm gonna make you go fetch me things and do
Mhm.
this and be a complete jackass the entire time. And Fisher's like,
Yeah.
and yeah, that would be
Open a pub in my honor.
beer must be drank warm now because that is what I'm used
Yes.
to.
Here's the recipe that you all shall
So-
use.
All right, favorite
Exactly.
moments.
Yeah. So we get into favorite moments, and this whole obviously our drink of the episode is the Shrek and Donkey Show, and of course for me, while I really loved the Foley piece with, and I also loved the birds in the library and all of that, I thought that was great. This particular section of chapters, though, it's just it's the Shrek and Donkey Show, and it's fucking
So
hilarious.
good. So good.
Where Kingfisher has to like get boosted by Carrion. I was like dying, and he had to get Carrion's like having to get boosted up and making a cradle of a boot, but where Carrion's having to get boosted by Kingfisher to go over these ledges, and they're like trying to and there's just there's all these moments where there's even a moment where Kingfisher's like talking about, he's like, oh my God, if I have to look at Carrion one more time, I cannot listen to this smuggler anymore. He's like done with him.
What's
And
funny about when he's lifting him up, later on, they go through like the same path with Borath, and he didn't have to be lifted up. And Fisher's like,
no.
what the fuck? He's like, you did it. You could have said no.
Yeah.
We could have found another way.
And you realize
but you did it.
and right. And then there's this moment like, I'm not useful to anyone in Yavelia Fisher, but I want to be, and I can be useful in this. I told Saris I'd help. I told her I'd come back. So no, I can't just leave you. And so this moment again where Carrion's reminding Fisher, like, hey, it's a choice that you like are treating me like I don't know anything. It's a choice where you're undermining who I am. And I'm just like letting you because I don't really have any responsibilities here. And like, you're not asking for any help. So I'm just gonna chill. And he
Yeah.
does. And so this is like a section where we realize how much Carrion can be a lot more useful than he actually is. And there's also this part where there's a moment where Carrion's like dying and he's like, hate to be a bother, but if you're not in a position to save me right now, could you possibly just like kill me instead because this really sucks? And this is where he's getting like stabbed a million times over by the scorpions. And I was just dying laughing. There were so many moments where I was like, oh my God, these two. And then in the audio, Anthony Palimi, who does the audio for Carrion, is just incredible. And the way that he can do Carrion and Kingfisher in the same moment in breath, and you can really tell them apart, but you can also like notice the tonality and the humor that's there. He just does an incredible job. And so I was doing the immersive read. It was just way more enjoyable to like listen to his voice do that. It was great.
Yeah. No, basically any moment with Carrie and Kingfisher was like a favorite moment. I would just say those are just my favorite chapters, just highlight all of them. But especially at the end of when they are basically trying to figure out what to do with Joshin, whether to kill him or whatever, they're arguing because Swift is like, I'm not going to drag that carcass to figure out if we're going to need an antivenom or not. And Fisher's like, stop talking. Carrion, the grown-ups are about to strike a bargain. And then
Yes,
Carrion's like, why are we bargaining
he's like trying
with
to
it?
talk
Like,
over them.
he's
Like, why are you
Yeah.
talking to the demon? Da, da. And Carrion,
Yeah.
like Kingfisher's like, shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
The whole time,
Yeah.
and I'm like, Carrion, please. The grown-ups are
Just
talking.
let the grown-ups talk.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Literally.
So,
Just
yeah.
dead. That kind of wraps up our reflections and thoughts and quotes and all of that through chapter 18. There's so much to this book. So of course, if you read this and you know, we didn't highlight something that you may have missed, let us know and comment and let us know information if you want, if you have any theories up through this point. I did want to talk about a new segment that we're adding called Down the Rabbit Hole. In this section of Down the Rabbit Hole, I specifically wanted to talk to you about, Michelle, about editing. They're related to Brimstone in particular. Has been a lot of backlash over a couple different scenes, and we'll talk about them in future chapters. But There's been so much talk and dialogue about editing and if that has diminished your experience as a reader or what you thought of going down the rabbit hole on the thought line of the author's impact of what happens when a slip happens and gets through that isn't supposed to. And I feel like there has been an unwarranted amount of backlash on Callie Hart to make a statement or talk about what happened with Brimstone. There are two key specific moments I'm referring to where the editors missed a moment that could have been corrected. And when I tell you that there are in almost every single book, especially in Kindle Unlimited or in an indie book, there are constantly, like, little grammatical errors and even things where, the person should have stopped talking, like, with a quotation, and the quotation's not added, and they have stopped talking, but they didn't add it in editing, or just different things where it just doesn't make sense. And for the one specific line I'm referring to here is where uh there's a
Chapter
chapter
14.
where Yep. Chapter 14, where it's a section of chapters that we already went through, but we didn't talk about this specifically. There's a line where it says that Carrion is training with Lorith. And we know that Carrion can't be training with Lorith because Carrion just was in a chapter with Kingfisher up 2 pages before, and he's in Zilvaren. So there's this editing glitch here. And the reason I say that is that Callie went on to respond to several other people who reached out and was like, how is in chapter 14, how is Carrion with Lorith training? Like, is there a lapse of time? Is there something I'm not understanding? Like, what's going on here? And I even text you. And then the next question is, okay, how much effort do we give this? And like, how much of it a complaint or an issue is it once it's corrected? So that's kind of my question for you, is because I personally don't, that shit happens all the time. I just don't think it's worth blaming Callie for. I don't think it's worth over criticizing the story for. I think that human error is going to happen. And I don't know. What are your thoughts?
So it was an unfortunate mistake. Callie's job is not to fix her grammar. As an author, her job is not to fix her grammar, especially when you have an editing team. So to have backlash on Callie, who's creating the story, and yes, she probably goes through and fixes whatever grammar she needs to, or she feels like she has to, but she wrote this book in 3 months. I remember
Yeah,
she was in an interview. 3 months. She wrote this book. This
that's not a
600
lot of time.
page book. That's why she has editors, plural editors, to go back through knowing there are mistakes. So there shouldn't be any backlash on Callie because this wasn't a mistake that she made. This was a mistake that her editors made.
That she caught.
She caught, and she even said that she caught it multiple times and was supposed to be removed. So if it's like, it didn't take away from the story for me because I was like, oh, that's clearly a mistake. I'm going to look past it.
Yeah,
It's not going to ruin the entire
exactly.
book. I don't think it should. I think paying too much attention to it is taking away from the story, and that's not fair to Callie at all. And there were other mistakes too that I bet people didn't catch because there are a bunch of comma errors, and I only know that
Oh, yeah.
because I was an English teacher and my background's in literature, and I like took a whole class on like proper grammar. So I'm like, okay, that's a misplaced comma. And I'm like, I'm not gonna care about it because it's not taking away from the story. And the fact that she already
Right.
addressed it, she doesn't need to formally address it. Like Instagram already did that for her in TikTok. So
Mhm.
what's she gonna say? Oops, my bad. So
Well, and also, like, is it worth her, what is she gonna do? What do people expect her to do? And I think that's kinda why I'm on a
yeah,
bookish rant about this, is that I feel like there's this Booktok and Bookstagram in general, I think, have gotten kinda out of control of the policing of requirements that you're placing on authors. No one has any
right.
requirements. Instagram and Booktok have no rules. Like, these rules that you're putting in place of, like, "Callie hasn't come out and said anything." Like, so what?
He doesn't
Okay,
have to.
and? Like, nobody owes you anything. Good for you
No,
that you found it. That's great. Good for her that she privately messaged, was kind enough to privately message and respond to readers and say, "Hey, yeah, this is an error that we caught." But ultimately, if anyone should be doing it, should be like Read Forever or Hotterscape or one of her publishers should
It
be coming out and
honestly, it
saying,
should.
hey, we didn't catch this. It shouldn't be coming directly from Callie. And they could be the ones who are saying, hey, we noticed this grammatical error. Yeah, sure, because it's her creative work and Callie's creative work that there's a mistake here. It
But that
could do
wasn't her
that. But
job.
is there, but it's also,
That
right.
wasn't a
And it's,
mistake on
is
her
it,
job. No.
yeah. And is it her responsibility to do that? I don't think
No.
so. And I think it's an unfair burden that a lot of Booktok and the Bookstagram community kind of went after her. Meanwhile, I'm just out here like reading for vibes and noticed it and was like, okay, cool, and like kept going. Because guess what? Every book I've ever read, I would say there is not an example that I can think of where I didn't catch a grammatical error, like a
Mhm.
small one. And guaranteed, I am not someone who has a huge literary background by any means. And so, like, it's just going to happen. It happens in movies all the time. It happens in every type of work of art. There's going to be something that somebody wished was a different way that isn't. And you're just not going to please everyone. Is it definitely an error? Absolutely. But is it something that warrants this level of response that the community is demanding? I don't think so.
No.
And I don't think it's everybody. I think it's only a subsection. But still, it bothered
Right.
me enough to want to ask you about it. So here we are.
The subsection does get loud though, unfortunately, because
Mhm.
that's what the algorithm is feeding. So that does get loud, and that's unfortunate. I feel like that Bookstagram and Booktok has become a beast. Like, and honestly, it bullied her into creating a whole new cover. You know.
Yeah.
So and now we're
Yes.
doing this again over an editing error that technically wasn't. It wasn't her
Well,
mistake.
and here's the thing.
So
There's the other backlash of you want a book really fast, you want it in under a year, you want a completed series in under a year, but you also want it to be
perfectly.
absolutely perfect,
Mm,
infallible, and every single line to be a work of art. I mean, you can't have it both ways. We need to be
nope.
realistic here. You also don't want AI in your books. You also don't want, which I don't either. But to be fair, you're sitting here saying that you want something completely perfect and infallible that's made by a human. I mean, that's just an unrealistic ask. It just is. It's not going to
Yep.
happen that way. It's unrealistic and it's unfair to put that burden onto Callie. That's kind of how I felt, which I
Agreed.
think you agree. But I thought it was worth addressing because there was so much
So
specifically
much.
related to Brimstone about editing. So I want to make sure we
Mhm.
cover it in the show. But that brings us to mystery
Mystery
Q&A.
Q&A. Okay, so my question for you is when you were a child, we all
Okay.
have like our thing of attachment, right? Whether it
Yes.
be a stuffed animal, an item, a photo, whatever. So what was your thing of attachment that you had throughout your childhood?
Yeah, I had two. I was kind of like Linus, from Snoopy. I had a
Oh
blanket
yeah.
that I brought around
Aw.
with me. And this blanket was small and it was a baby blanket. My dad, at part of his career, we talked about this before, was in Saudi Arabia for work. And he got
Mhm.
me this blanket, which I have it, it's in my closet. I still have it to this day, but it has it's a martini. It's not gonna make a lot of sense. It's a martini glass with a little mouse inside and a little kitten that's trying to get to the martini glass, like trying to get the little
Okay.
mouse out, and they're like playing. And I didn't know what a martini glass was as a kid, but this was like some design that was a baby blanket in Saudi
Mhm.
Arabia. He brought it back, and I just love this thing so much. I had it with me everywhere. I used to bring it with me everywhere. My parents were divorced. They divorced when I was 3. And so I wanted an item that could go house to house that was small, that was like mine. And that was it for me. So that blanket went with me everywhere. I still have it to this day. It's in one of the closets in my house here. And yeah, so that was one. And then another, when I got older, got me this bear for Valentine's Day, this white bear that had a red sweater and like a white heart knit on it. And till the 6th grade, I carried that bear around with me. And I think a lot of that actually had to do with childhood trauma because my mom wasn't always there and she had a lot of issues. We've kind of talked about that off and on, but I used to carry this bear around with me. I got made fun of for it actually. By the time I was in 6th grade, I should not have had a bear carrying around with me, but I did. Bear whenever was in my backpack. This thing went everywhere until finally in middle school I did not carry anything around. But it was something that for sure, having that object with me, I think going through a lot of trauma as a kid, it is known that there's comfort in that.
Yeah.
And yeah, both of those objects were very comforting for me throughout my childhood. Good question. What about you?
That's funny because I have also a stuffed animal and a blanket. So
Uh-uh.
my stuffed animal was, I don't know if you remember this show. It was Wishbone.
I
It
remember
was, yeah.
Wishbone.
So this is like really old
The
school,
dog,
like
right?
90s. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's a dog. It has a paw print on its ear.
Yeah.
So I saved that. No, it's my daughter's. But yeah, so Wishbone was my stuffed animal of choice. And ironically, my blanket was this thick mink blanket that my dad brought from Saudi Arabia
What?
because we talked about how my dad also worked in Saudi Arabia. And
Oh,
it's just my brother had one and
by
I
the way,
had
this for
one.
those listening, we didn't know each other then,
No.
okay? We didn't know each other until we were in
We
our
didn't meet till
adulthood.
we're
We
adults.
also
Yeah.
our parents did not know each other in Saudi Arabia either. This is all, like,
No.
pure coincidence, not the
Yep.
same time periods. Anyway,
Yep.
continue for those just listening. That way we can
Yeah, it's
preface by
really
saying that.
yeah, I think we discovered that our
We
fathers
discovered another
overlapped,
mystery Q&A
and
question. Yeah,
yeah, it was on the
like,
show.
I don't
So,
know,
we
6
had no
months ago,
idea.
we discovered that.
But yeah, it's this mink blanket, and it's just really it's my winter blanket, but it's, like, really just a comfort because, brought back from my childhood. It's really thick and cozy, and yeah, when my dad, because he would when he worked in Saudi and when he worked overseas, we lived with him until I was, like, 3, and then he would just be gone for, like, months at a time and then come back and then be gone and
Mhm.
be come back. So, he would bring stuff back, but, I want something cozy. So, you know, the blanket was kind of my thing of attachment that I had all the time, and it's really thick, so Florida, like, during the summer,
I was gonna
we
say,
didn't
yeah.
use it, but it was
Mhm.
there. Like, as a pillow or, like, just have,
Yeah,
like, flopped at the end of your bed to, like, lounge on, and
yeah,
yeah. So, yeah, that's funny. That was also
innocuous.
yeah.
Yeah,
So, alright, hit
that
me with
is
your
funny.
question.
Okay, I was just wondering, like, what we're in the season of giving, and I was wondering if you had a specific charity that comes to mind that you feel really either passionate about or you know, wish people did more for, one that was impactful to you or one that is important to you. Something in the line as far as, like, the season of giving.
One charity that is important to me or that has been kind of impactful to me is, like, Make-A-Wish. If you don't know
Mm.
Make-A-Wish, it is a charity where kids with terminal illnesses get a wish from Disney, and basically usually it's to go to the parks, but these are kids with, like, very
They
terminal
can pick
illnesses.
anything too, I think, right?
Yeah, they can
Yeah.
pick a lot of different things, but I actually volunteered at their location because there's a location that's close to Disney property that they have that they can stay their
Mhm.
family can stay with them with if as they're, getting their wish, and just I volunteered there multiple times when I was a kid or teenager, young adultish,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
just seeing, like, young children with, I just distinctly remember this, like, one girl, she literally had, like, a scar for because she just had open heart surgery. I'm just like, "You're
Yeah.
5," and just seeing all these
Yeah.
children go through something like that, and just one being offered one glimpse of hope, one glimpse of, like,
Mhm.
something to, like, drag them out of their the position that they're in, because that's awful,
Yeah.
going through all of these things that they go through. So that's just one that's been impactful to me that I think about this time
Mhm.
of year, and especially since, now that we have children, just thinking about going through that as an adult, with a child. So,
Yeah, for
yeah.
sure.
What about you?
Yeah, that's a good answer. So, 2 come to mind. I'll mention my husband's first. My husband's a Marine Corps veteran, and for him, he was impacted by and also helped with Toys for Tots. So, if you're familiar
Mm.
with Toys for Tots,
Toys R
it
Us,
is
yeah.
it's a big one where you can donate throughout the year. They have different bins and things that they do where they have collections, but
Most
the Marine
schools
Corps will
actually
help
have
give out. Mhm.
most schools
Or
actually have
some schools
locations
are
for that, yeah.
yeah, and some of the schools are recipients for some of the Toys for Tots, and they have different
Mm.
events and things that go on, and your toys have a direct correlation to and connection to the communities that you serve. So if you donate an unwrapped toy, it really does go to a child in need, and my husband did help distribute those toys. He was also, when he was a kid, a school that received the toys, so it was kind of full circle for him. So that is one charity
Yeah.
that he really is passionate about, and we donate to each year. Another charity that is specific to Central Florida, but I'm sure that there are tons of similar ones where you're located or anyone's located is for here, it's Second Harvest Food Bank. That's a really big one in the
Mhm.
Central Florida area. And I have volunteered with them giving back as far as taking time to go there and distribute and move food around. They'll have like different times you can come volunteer hours and get the food sorted into bins for them. And they basically collect all the food from local restaurants that are no longer able to be used and they, exceeded their shelf life by a day or whatever. They're still edible, but not sellable. So a lot of the restaurants will donate food and canned goods and things like that. And Second Harvest Food Bank has a delivery system that's extensive where they distribute food every day to those less fortunate. And so I always think about that, especially given what the state of our country was in with the shutdown most recently that, benefits were impacted, which is should never happen. But and then just thinking about the holidays and how hard it is on some families to come up with the extra money to be able to do for their kids and their families. And so when I think
Right.
about Toys for Tots and I think about, Make-A-Wish that's able to do these really big grand gestures for families that are already so financially burdened by either medical costs or just mentally burdened by just these awful things that happen. It's the season of giving for a reason. And I thought it would be cool to ask you a question about what your thoughts were related to that. So there we go.
Yeah. All right. Well, before we wrap up, let's talk about what's coming up next on Book Club After Dark.
Next episode, we're going to be diving into chapters 19, if you can believe it, through 27 of Brimstone by Callie Hart. We are going to be taking Christmas, though, and New Year's off, so there's going to be a 2-week gap before we start that coverage. Also, Michelle's having a baby. I don't know if we talked about this, but I feel like we did.
Maybe a little
Michelle will
bit.
be having baby boy. Yes, so much needed break for Michelle to get some
Yeah.
rest and reprieve during this time as well and enjoy some time with her family, while I will also be enjoying time with mine is on his way, so
Yeah.
got to get ready for that. And we're going to be enjoying time with our families. We will see you in 2026. And we're going to
Mhm.
be bringing part 3 of our Brimstone coverage with you on January 8th. We're looking to continue to dissect this novel in the new year with you.
And don't forget, we want to hear from you. If you have thoughts on Brimstone or suggestions for future reads, drop a comment below or message us on one of our social media platforms at Book Club After Dark Pod. Show us your fan art, theories, or anything bookish you'd like to share.
You can also visit our website, bookclubafterdark.co, stay up to date on our cozy content, and check out our merch.
That's all for tonight. Sleep tight, night owls. Until next time, happy reading.